Welcome. Today, I'm going to talk about a framework that I've been developing for the last couple of years. I spoke about it first publicly at an event at Mintra back in early 2020. Since then, I've been able to refine it a bit more. It's a way for both individuals and product organizations to prioritize and work on a possible roadmap for self. And it's about identifying gaps, and it's about figuring out what are the things you possess and you're aware of them, and what are things you possess and are not aware of them. Uh, I call this the possession awareness quadrant. Uh, so let's jump in. So essentially, as the name suggests, it's a quadrant. It's divided into four parts. And on the y axis, we measure whether we possess an attribute. And on the x axis, we check for whether we are aware of the fact that we possess an attribute. Now let's talk a bit more about it. Let's get into these definitions, and let's get into the fact that there are four quadrants and what each quadrant represents. So definitions. An attribute or quality is essentially a specific talent, skill, competence, knowledge base, or feature. Now, this could be something that you as an individual possess, or which your organization or your product possesses, right? The y axis measures whether an individual or a group has an attribute. So, the question that we will always ask is, we possess ABC? The x-axis measures whether the individual or group is aware of these attributes. So the question to ask is, am I or are we aware of possessing ABC? Now, what most people would say is that, hey, if I possess something, am I not aware of it? But the sad answer is that no, there are times when you possess qualities and you are unaware of the fact that you possess these qualities. There are times when you don't possess an attribute, but you're aware of the fact that you don't possess that attribute, right? And there are also times where you don't possess a particular quality and you're not aware of the fact that you possess that quality, right? So there are situations and there are circumstances where people are not aware of their strengths, and this can lead to a lot of disastrous thinking on their part. So let's go one by one into each of these four quadrants and see what they all stand for. So I essentially think of the first quadrant as strengths and leverage. The second quadrant is hidden treasures. The third quadrant is made up of dangers. And the fourth quadrant essentially is the quadrant of opportunities. And let's explore each one of these individually. So, quadrant one, strengths and leverage. This is essentially the realm where you have a superpower and you're very aware of that superpower. This is like being Superman, right? One of my all time favorite clips is from Superman, where imagine the confidence that you need to have to stand in front of a man wielding a gun and not flinch when a bullet is fired right into your eye, right? This is the quality that the first sort of quadrant represents. You have power, you have a quality, you have a competence, and you're very, very aware of it. You're able to use it. So essentially, you're able to weaponize your strength, right? A lot of companies do this incredibly well. A lot of individuals do this really, really well, right? Think like Apple. Apple is a company which, of all the larger companies, I feel like Apple is very, very aware of its strengths and it utilizes them really, really well. It talks about how well designed its products are. It talks about the fact that people who create a lot of things, who create a lot of value, use Apple's products, right? These are strengths which it has marketed really, really well. A lot of other companies actually fail to do this, right? Now let's go to the second quadrant, right? This is the quadrant which I call hidden treasures. So you possess a certain competence, a certain skill, or your company or your product possesses a certain competence or skill, but you're not aware of it, right? In mythology, I sort of liken this to Lord Hanuman. This character, for those of you who don't know Indian mythology, Hanuman is this character from Indian mythology, from a great epic, the Ramayana. And he's one of the heroes of Ramayana, right? Uh, Now, Hanuman is a character who is all powerful and all intelligent. And this is a very, very rare combo. So strong is he that there is really no comparison in the mortal world of his strength. But Hanuman has a curse. As a youngster, he was cursed with the fact that he would forget all his knowledge and would forget the fact that he possesses any strength. So here is this incredibly powerful, incredibly intelligent hero who is not aware of the fact that he has all these strengths. And on the eve of battle, whenever there are important occasions, other people have to remind him of who he is. Other people have to remind him that he can jump across oceans. Other people have to remind him that his strength is unsurpassable. So strong is he that in one of my favorite parts of the Ramayana, he's trying to find a medicinal herb to help one of his friends, and he's not able to locate it on a mountain. So instead of wasting time, he just lifts up the entire mountain and flies back to the field of battle, so that the medic can actually look for the herb and sort of save his friend's life. That's the kind of strength this character possesses, right? But the Hanuman problem is very, very real, right? It is the fact that you possess something but you're not aware of it. So what is required? In the Ramayana, it's a character called Jamvant who is responsible for reminding Hanuman of who he is and what his powers are. In the real world, companies face this problem a lot, individuals face this problem a lot, and I think this is where great coaches come into play for individuals, and this is where um, outside consulting companies sometimes come in and help you unravel and figure out what are the things that you possess that you're not making use of. Uh, the other thing which happens a lot is that when companies are pushed to the brink, that is when they sometimes realize and sometimes figure out the competencies that they had, which help them survive. So, survival mode also sometimes pushes you to discovering these. Slack and Shopify both are great examples of this. Slack started out as a gaming company, and the product that we see today was an internal tool that they had built. But they pivoted because the gaming thing was not going well. And look at where Slack is today. Shopify is a very similar example as well. Shopify started out as the founders trying to build uh, e-commerce store for snowboarding equipment, but that didn't take off. But they realized that hey, a whole bunch of e-commerce startups could use lot of physical startups could use what they were trying to build, and they could build shop fronts for other people, right? So when they were pushed to the brink, that is when they became aware of the fact that they had these strengths. One of the other things before I move to the next one is that data is another one of those strengths which everyone possesses but is not really aware of how to use. And I'll give you a prime example. Data is data, right? Data is only as good as the inferences you draw from it. And a lot of companies are sitting on very valuable data, but very few of them are able to turn that data into inferences. So that's another place where if you become aware of what you possess, you can then sort of bring it into the first quadrant and actually weaponize it and use it as a superpower. Now let's move to the third quadrant, right? It's the quadrant of dangers. It's the quadrant where neither do you possess a competence and nor are you aware of it. So you're unaware of your own ignorance. So you don't know what you don't know. And why is this a danger? This is a danger because this is like being one of those incredibly incompetent movie villains, right? You just don't know how incompetent you are, but you still want to be a super villain, right? And you sort of go bungling into one misadventure after the other, right? A classic example of this from the world of technology was, uh, people just sort of missing the boat or sort of misidentifying opportunities or just not seeing that the tide has turned. I'd let you take in this quote from uh, the BlackBerry CEO on what he thought of the upcoming iPhone and the fact that it was fully subsidized and with a plan. And he just thought that phones were going to be email devices. And how wrong was he, right? This is sort of, they didn't possess a quality and they weren't aware of it, and it came and bit them really hard. So the incompetence of movie villains is essentially, this plays out a lot at early stage companies. It plays out at early stage companies because the companies lack product market fit because they don't really understand the market. They don't really understand what's happening in the market and what is required from them. They haven't done their homework well, so they misidentify value propositions, and sometimes they go after wrong insights and the wrong user set. Uh, Hence, building things which nobody really cares for. This happen. This, by the way, happens to individuals. This happens to organizations as well. Incumbents failing to see the tide turning, as in the case of BlackBerry, is a great example of this. That you neither possess nor are you aware of a certain set of qualities, and when other people have it, you sort of seem to not identify it. Right. Now let's talk about the final quadrant, which is what I like to call the quadrant of opportunities. This is about the fact that there are certain qualities, certain competencies that you don't possess, but you are very aware of the fact that you don't possess these. You're very aware of the fact uh, that these are things you want to work on. And the reason I call them opportunities are that these are the easiest things which go on any company's roadmap or any individual's roadmap, because you have a clear path. You don't know something, uh, you don't possess a certain quality. Can you sort of work towards gaining that quality, right? For all of you who are fans of manga and anime, or any hero's journey, right? This is what I compare to a hero's journey. And the classic example I give is, of any RPG game that you would have played. Small boy wakes up in his village home and realizes that everyone in the village has disappeared. And outside his house, these big rat monsters are prowling, and this boy decides to pick up his dad's wooden sword and goes out and fights the monsters, right? He loses half his health points, but he's able to vanquish the first couple of rat monsters. And he gets some points as a result of this, and he uses that to turn the wooden sword into a metal sword, and then he gets a little bit of armor, and his health points increase and his strength increases. And now the same rat monsters, which were so difficult for him to defeat earlier, are incredibly easy. And he goes on to bigger and better villains, and sort of goes on to become a far more powerful hero. Right. So the hero's journey is a classic example of a hero who who progresses from one step to the other, at every step identifying the competencies that he or she doesn't have, gaining them, becoming stronger, and moving on. Right. So this is what is required for building your personal roadmap. The way companies use this is phenomenal. The way companies use this is that they try and identify things which their competitors don't possess. So if Apple again sort of comes to mind. Apple does a very good job of it, where it goes after other tech companies because it knows that privacy is their weak point, and privacy is where it can go and attack them. So this fourth quadrant of opportunities is also a quadrant of opportunities, because if you do this analysis for your competitors, then you can actually identify what it is that they don't possess, but you are aware of the fact that they don't possess a certain quality, and you hit them hard where it hurts the most. Right. So hero's journey essentially is the roadmap for your organization or for yourself. It is a great tool for competitor analysis. What do they don't have that we can claim to have, which Apple does really well? The last point I want to make is that the lack of diversity is something that everyone is aware of, but very few companies do anything about it. And I think, again, it's one of those superpowers. It's been now proven without a shred of doubt that more diverse teams and more diverse groups of individuals, when they come together, build much better products, build companies which are far more profitable, and essentially do better on any metric that you can measure on. Right. Despite of this awareness, there are very few companies which actually sort of work towards gaining this competence. And I think that's something for all of us to look out for. So essentially, yeah, this brings us to sort of the end of this talk. So the possession awareness quadrant again. Quadrant one, you possess something and you're very aware of it. So it's Superman's confidence. Quadrant two, you possess something but you're unaware of it, and other people have to remind you what you're missing out on. It's what I call the Hanuman problem. Quadrant three is the danger zone. It's the incompetence of movie villains. You neither possess nor are you aware of the fact that you're missing out on something, a dangerous territory to be in. And quadrant four is the hero's journey. It's the classic roadmap. You're aware of the things you don't possess, and each step of the way you're trying to possess these. You're trying to sort of build up on the strengths that you don't have. Uh, and this is it. I think if I think about it, these are the four things that each individual or any organization, any product organization can work on. You know, the second one, of course, requires help from outsiders, but the first and fourth one are pretty straightforward. The third one is a difficult one. Again, it's one of those traps that the only way you can get out of it is if you're made aware of the fact that you lack a certain competence, and then at least you get pushed to the fourth quadrant. So usually the way it works is, being in the first quadrant is great. In being in the second quadrant, at least you have strengths. You have to be reminded of them. You have to be told. So you moved from the second quadrant to the first quadrant. Being in the fourth quadrant is again a great sign, because these are things you can work on. Being the third quadrant is the most dangerous. So the work that needs to be done is to move from the third quadrant to the fourth quadrant, to become aware of the fact that you don't possess certain things. So I hope this helps. I've now been able to apply this not only to my the various product roadmaps that I've worked on over the years, but also to my own career, to myself, and I've been helping people trying to sort of apply this framework to their own careers, to the way they think about their own personal roadmaps and journeys, and how they can sort of uh, build upon the strengths that they have, and work on the things that they don't possess. So I hope you enjoyed this. Take care.